I'm Dr. Patti Britton, and I've been working in the field of sexual wellness, sexual health, sexual healing, sexual education for over 40 years. And so I'm sort of an elder in the field in the broad umbrella tent that we call sexology, which is really defined as the study of what people do sexually and how they think and feel about it. So I have credentials up the wazoo. Most importantly, I'm board certified as a clinical sexologist, which is my specialization area. I'm also certified as a sexuality educator, and I am known as the mother of sex coaching because I developed, created, and pioneered the profession itself called sex coaching, which is the integration of tried and true sex therapy as kind of the what, sexology is the what, and the how is using a personalized coaching approach. And most of my work is spent as the founder and CEO of sexcoachu.com. And that is the premier and probably the most comprehensive training program for people aspiring to become certified, trained well, and certified as sex coaches. We have students and grads around the entire world in over 80 countries and Puerto Rico. And I also am an author. I've made a lot of media. I run webinars and podcasts and all kinds of stuff, and have been privileged to be the executive producer on two important documentaries in the field of sexology. One of them was groundbreaking. It came out many years ago by my now deceased partner, Dr. Robert Dunlap. He was the consummate filmmaker as a documentarian and also as a sexologist. And he made a film called Beyond Vanilla. And it was actually essentially the first documentary that talked about, interviewed people living in the life of BDSM, kink, and fetish play. And I was the executive producer. And also he did a groundbreaking project, which was the life story of the happy hooker, Xaviera Hollander, and she happens to be my cousin, and talk about sex work and talk about positive sexuality. She is still alive, and she remains an iconographic person and persona in our understanding of what is sex, how does sex work, what is pleasure, what is eroticism, and has just finished, I think, her 36th book, because she's a prolific author. So sex and writing run my family.
I mean, wow, your resume just couldn't blow anyone away. I mean, incredible. I feel
Thank
honored
you.
to have this interview. And actually, who I was speaking to, the expert right before our call, mentioned that he had gone to coach or sex coach you to get his sex coaching credentials. So,
Way to go. That's really great.
yeah,
I love it.
yeah, that's incredible.
I love it. It's a small world.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about, because, I've heard from a lot of PhDs, therapists, doctors that they have like one course in human sexuality. It's something like very small when they're in medical school or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
And I think that that's why sex coaching may have blown up in the way that it did, is that people that wanted to help people wanted to learn more themselves, because the actual teaching institutions and medical institutions don't teach very much about sexuality, from my understanding.
Absolutely correct. In fact, in 2007, I became a professor at a very renowned small graduate institute in Los Angeles area, which then was absorbed by a huge training program and PhD program. And at that time, the stat was a licensed marriage and family therapist only required 10 hours of teaching in human sexuality. And the sad part, and medical students, 3 hours. So the sad part is that these are the people who are actually serving the needs of their patients. Many, many gynecologists, urologists, integrative medicine professionals who lack that training can only go so far. You know, they can be somebody who addresses disease or injury or some form of pathology, the negative side of sexuality. And they might be a good technician, they might be a great surgeon, but they don't know and they're not comfortable in asking the right questions. So it's very rare to even find a medical professional who can say something as simple as, how's your sex life? And I think you're right. That's where sex coaching comes in, and clinical sexological approach, which is so sex positive, pro the client, not pathologizing, but making sex natural and healthy and pleasurable and something that you're entitled to experience. And the same thing holds true for therapists. The sad news is that many of those marriage and family therapists or psychologists or social workers who actually are doing the work of a couples counselor, they stop at that point where the problem actually is sex, or usually no sex or lack of sex or lack of touch. And that's when I get my referrals. Because the psychotherapy community at large is either uncomfortable because they're not properly trained to have that level of comfort, or they actually don't even know where to begin to ask the questions. And as a sexologist, our questions are very, very explicit and very nuanced. You know, it might be something, for example, as, you know, well, where on the clitoral structure do you enjoy being rubbed, and how rapidly do you like that? And do you like it consistently? Is it where the hood is? Is it below? You know, that kind of thing. And most clinicians don't have either the expertise or the comfort level that, you know, they go, sex, I can't talk about that. So that's where we do come in. And I've just had such a joyful journey all of these years, and not only serving my clients, hundreds and hundreds of my own clients, but in training professionals like our sex coaches who graduate from Sex Coach U. I think it's so cool that you just interviewed one of my grads.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm so happy right now.
Yes, that was the interview right before that
It's so
went
cool.
out, that went over. Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so I want to ask you, bravo to you for kind of seeing this need, if you will, for professionals to understand and know more about sexuality and how to approach it.
Yeah.
For people that need this training. But I want to ask you, why do you think it is that even in the medical field, it seems either unimportant because there's so little training and teaching around it, or it seems maybe it's taboo? What are your thoughts around that?
It's the discomfort that we have around sex, around sexual anatomy, and it's the toxic shame that is the carried shame. Sometimes it's intergenerational shame, sometimes it's just societal shame, and that shame needs to be managed. You know, eliminated is the word I really want to say, but sometimes what we're helping our clients do is just learn how to manage that. You don't get rid of parts of yourself. You learn how to have a happy family inside yourself, meaning that there are parts of you you may not like or who may be really difficult to live with, but they're part of you, and you have to learn how to really be the steward of all of the parts of yourself. I also think that, I'm about to say something I think controversial, which is how much money is there in it? So where the money is in medical care is in the pharmaceutical industry. I'm a fan of pharmaceuticals when they save lives and they truly help people. I am not a fan of using pharma as the cure for things like the inhibited sexual desire among those who identify as women. We've had very many controversies about just pop a pill and your desire will come into force. It's not how it works. Our desire, our eroticism, our sexual desire is so multi-layered. And actually, I love working with a client or a couple where desire has kind of, taken a holiday, and helping them find the pathway to reignite that desire. And I have a system that I use to do that. But I think it's the aversion to talking about sex. I think we're still really uncomfortable and nervous talking about sex, even though you and I are talking about sex as something that people can avail themselves of in a virtual relationship. And we have to define what sex is. We haven't done that yet. But really, the concept of talking about sex, people are so much more comfortable doing it than talking about it. And that is where the gap resides.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, absolutely. And you see clear examples of this even in our culture where we sell everything with sexuality, but the
Yes.
moment
Toothpaste, cars.
anything, we will
Yeah.
sell your product with sexuality.
Yeah.
But the moment we need to talk about it with our partner or wherever, we're like, whoa, wait a minute, this is uncomfortable. And we seem to stigmatize and shame those who have taken control of their sexuality and their pleasure. I know I see this towards live Jasmine models all the time. These
Yeah.
women, a lot of them are very clear on their pleasure, their sexuality, and they've taken a role of helping others explore that within themselves. But the moment that they tell someone they're a cam model, they might be judged or lose opportunities or lose friends or family.
Right, right. I think you may not believe this, but the same thing holds true for those of us who are clinicians, who are educators, because even just saying I work in sexuality may be a lightning rod or a trigger for somebody to go, oh, you must have sex with your clients. No, I don't touch my clients. I don't have sex with my clients. I'm not the cocktail party entertainment here. I'm a professional and I'm about health. And I think what is health is being a healthy person means that all of our parts are functional as far as they can be, and that we're at choice. And it's interesting what you just said about cam girls, because models, because one of my very best friends was Candida Royale. And Candida Royale was, like me in many ways, a pioneer. And I'm a pioneer in creating a profession known as sex coaching. And hopefully people get properly trained and certified before they go out and do this complicated work, because it's complicated. But Candida was a pioneer as a filmmaker, as a director, as a producer of erotic films made by and for women and couples, those who love them. And so she was somebody who really helped inform me. And of course, I also did a doctorate, and my dissertation was on porn. So I'm a world porn expert, actually. And that's how I met her. I was doing a study comparing the porn made by women directors versus the winners within an 11-year period of the best male made films. I don't mean gay male, I mean heterosexually directed and oriented. And so, for her to take that risk and come out as somebody who is pro sex, pro eroticism, pro talking about it, pro showing it tastefully and often with humor, she really helped establish this cultural context to embrace feminist and women's erotica. And in a way, and you have to help me understand this better, the cam industry is another derivation of that. It's another way of creating erotic entertainment, which everyone is entitled to, and B, relational experience, right? And that is something that couldn't happen by watching a movie. It's something that can happen in a live engagement virtually.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would say, and particularly like Jasmine, what members on this platform know this platform for is more the relationship experience
Yeah,
that they
yeah,
get.
yeah.
Because as you know, there's so many places where they can go online and engage in sexual content for free.
Yes.
Um, but
Yeah.
on Jasmine, many of the members that come here are really looking for some form of a relationship. They call it like the girlfriend experience,
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Yeah.
and
The GFE.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
GFE. And
Yeah.
I've had models tell me that they'll have a member that calls them video call, and they're just like washing their dishes together and having coffee. Like the member just wants to feel like someone's there with him. Like
Yeah.
it's not even anything many times. In fact, the Kinsey Institute is studying the Jasmine platform and its member base, and they found that the models that had the longest calls were not even talking about anything that explicit. It was more day to day. What did the dog eat? What are you doing? And again, just giving people a sense of there's someone there.
Yeah. There's an epidemic of loneliness. And in the literature of psychology, it's well documented. And this is one of the new pandemics that we're looking at. And sex, I'm going to go on a trajectory here.
Please,
So,
yeah.
sex does not necessarily equal intimacy, but this sense of connecting, often people use sex just to feel they're making a connection with another human being. And living in the world we live in today, which is so virtually steeped in relationship, whether it's tweeting or threads, the new one, or, the cam world or anything else where we're having interaction, this is really supplementing what has been missing for people. However, there is a downside. So you can ask me later if you want, what is the downside? Because there's an upside and a downside to all of it to me.
What is the downside?
I know you asked. Well, I think that the downside, and this is how I feel about all social media and the concept of this is my friend and I can trust this platform. I'm talking about all social media, all virtual connected means and platforms. It's a pseudo relationship. It may feel like an intimate and real relationship, but even when I'm coaching clients who are dating, and I just had an 82-year-old woman as a client saying, honey, I've been a widow and I really feel like it's time to get out there and date again. I'm like, you go, girl, this is fantastic. And yet I always coach my clients or teach my students, get into reality as quickly as you can, because in some ways, we're sensory beings. Our senses really govern our physical experience here on this planet. And if we're not able to be in real time, be in real space with someone, we really don't smell them like a dog might smell another dog. And on the online dating scope, what happens is people get into texting on these platforms. And maybe it moves to a telephone or a video call, which is what most of the dating platforms offer now. But it's different when you sit across from somebody and you're seeing who they really are without the filters, or you're hearing their voice unmodified, or you're literally smelling them. Because if we think about what creates arousal biologically, in some ways, we're talking about pheromones. And I can't have a pheromone from you hit me if I'm looking at a piece of glass that's in front of me. So that real physical embodied experience isn't possible. And yet, there's also the possibility that what's happening is rehearsal for real social engagement. We're coming out of the PTSD of a pandemic. There isn't any human being on this earth, as far as I'm concerned, who isn't feeling that PTSD on some level, some severely. And there is something that gets kind of embedded or woven into our nervous system when we come out of 2.5 to 3 years of not being able to look at somebody without something covering their face, or we haven't been able to walk up to someone we know and say, do you want a hug? Or if you cough because you swallowed wrong, you're going to be shamed and blamed and put in the closet in that social gathering, right? We're all paranoid about all this stuff. So we're all coming out of this horrible era of the PTSD of isolation and in some ways severe loneliness. And that leads to shutdown, and that leads to depression, clinical classical depression, and that leads to major anxiety. So the mental health world is on fire, serving more and more and more clients because many of either My students are also mental health practitioners. My colleagues and friends are mental health practitioners. Even in my family, I know this is going on. So there's a phenomenon happening today where what Jasmine is serving, that this culture is serving needs that are they're almost still just bubbling up from the surface. I think there's something very profound going on. And I love that the Kinsey Institute is studying what's happening here, because I'm not only a donor to the Kinsey Institute, I'll say, and all of you should be who are watching, because it's such an important research institute and so sex positive and really the founding of our field of human sexual studies. But also I have been appointed as one of the legacy scholars. So my collection of all of my work will be residing in the Kinsey Library after I don't know my name anymore.
That's
and I'm ready to ship
incredible.
it. Yeah. So the Kinsey Institute is a very, very important institution. I love them.
I'm so inspired by you. I really am, you know. You also, and I have noticed this sometimes, especially with women who either study sexuality or really embrace it. There's just this, I don't know how to explain it, but a vibrance to you, you know?
Yeah.
Do you think that
Yeah.
that comes from being in touch with your sexuality?
Absolutely. Yeah, I believe, and I train my students and my clients to walk your talk. So, if you're going to be a role model or if you're going to be an advocate for healthy, positive sexuality, and I mean sexuality, not just sex, then you really have to clean your own stuff. You have to clean your garage, the internal garage. I always say my mission is to train as many people who are qualified and as I can around the world to become a clean and clear container for whatever the client brings to them. Because if I have issues around oral sex, for example, or anal sex, or cross-dressing, or whatever, how can I possibly be that person who serves the needs for that client? I can't. So I have my mind is infinite. My mind contains infinity in terms of what's possible for others to express sexually, erotically, in any way they choose to, with empowerment. That's what empowerment means, is making choices with being informed and making choices that really lift you up, that raise you, that let you become fully who you're meant to be. And I think that also, as we age, we have to keep the channels open. My specialty is sex and aging, because hello. And I don't mind. I always say I don't mind being a role model for older persons. I'm 76.
No, you're
And
not.
yes, I
Stop
am.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're
So
gonna have to go into your diet and skincare something at some point, because you
well,
look
that's a whole other discussion we'll have.
okay.
That'll be another interview. So, why I'm saying that for you and those who are watching is because we have to have role models for staying vibrant and vital and sexual, because if we don't use our anatomy, if we don't, it's kind of like if I didn't use my biceps, and I do, because I do exercise a lot, not like compulsively, but a lot, then what is going to happen is my bicep muscles are going to what? Atrophy. Same thing is true if you're looking at your genitalia and you're not having blood flow, you're not having sensation, you're not having energy flow, and you're not understanding how to properly stay healthy in terms of vaginal health or the vaginal biome or penile health or whatever it is, then you're going to fall off the curve, and you don't have to. I had one of my favorite clients. I'll never forget this woman. She was a client many years ago, and she said, honey, this is how she talked to me, honey, I have a problem. My husband and I have sex 4 times a week. Is that problematic? I said, what do you mean by sex? And she said, well, we do doggy, and then we do this, and he goes down on me, and yada, 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 yada. And I'm like, wow, that's fantastic. She said, and I think I'm peeing the bed. And I went, tell me more. So, of course, what she discovered is she was a female ejaculator. She and her husband were retired, and it was like their hobby, right? And they loved each other. So, there's nothing, it's not a problem. And that's part of my work and what our work in the world is. And I'm sure it's true of the CAM models, is to normalize and validate what people think about themselves, how they feel about themselves, and what they're doing, what their fantasies are, what their behaviors are, alone and or with partners, because that's what's missing. We don't have accurate kind of open communication really about sex and sexuality, especially for older people. That's a whole other conversation. And I think it's so important that we have open dialogue with the accurate information to be able to share and to feel like I'm okay and I can be okay at any age, because you can.
It's so beautifully said. So beautifully said. Thank you so much. And to your point, it is true that one of the biggest jobs of a CAM model is to give a member the space to be seen and heard.
Yeah.
And that is, and I've interviewed several members and models and experts like yourself. And what I have realized is more than even the sexual experience, and sometimes even beyond the conscious awareness of the member, they are really going there to feel like they're important and they're heard and their needs are worthy of being given to them.
Many of us grow up in a codependent household and or a codependent society where I'm speaking as a person here, where our needs came last. And this is particularly true of the socialization of girls and women. And things may be shifting now. We have the Me Too movement. We have, many more areas where the female voice is really being heard and females are being seen. If you think of Hollywood, that's a great example. I do live near Hollywood and, associated with the industry. So what I think is there's something about our brain, of course, knowing a little bit about neuroscience, I'm not a neuroscientist, that the more we go down the path of I'm worthless, I'm hopeless, I have this horrible thing happen to me, which is what I believe, even though I believe in psychotherapy very much, in order to coach somebody, they have to really be able to be coached. So if they have severe clinical depression or severe anxiety, or they're a borderline personality that's untreated or worse, what happens is they're really not coachable. But what I'm seeing is that as we say, oh me, poor me, this is my story, this is my story, this is my story, poor me. It's what Dan Siegel says in his work with the brain, that we're actually trotting on the path and making that path more barren, stronger. So the more we can kind of install positive neural pathways, the more we can heal, and the more we can begin to shift the brain and not only believe these more positive things are possible or that it's true about us, we also get to experience life in a different way. So I think absolutely, I have a different spin on it as a sexologist, not a psychologist. We're always going to, we have a different filters, like different glasses that we look through the world through, look at the world through. And I think the fact that somebody is giving permission, this is one of the key elements of sexology called the Plicit model. Those of us who are well-trained in sexology, whether we're sex educators, counselors, therapists, coaches, whatever, know that one of our founding fathers, Jack Annan, set up a system called Plicit, P-L-I-S-S-I-T. And this is how we work with a client over time. Guess what P stands for? The very first thing we do for a client is we administer permission. And it's not linear, it's circular. Permission, permission, permission. And that's what you're saying is happening through these conversations, through these interactions, is I'm giving you permission to be you. I'm giving you permission to want to do X, Y, Z. I'm giving you permission to have me tell you, you're a really good looking guy. And I actually do give feedback to my clients. Now, 98.9% 17% of them are on Zoom. So I don't know what they really look like in person, but I'm pretty good at seeing what somebody looks like through the Zoom lens. And I know that when I say to somebody, "You're so beautiful. Do you feel that?" It's sometimes like, "What did she say?" So I become the mirror that reflects back. And I think that's really what you're saying is this process of validating and normalizing, not saying you're normal. There's no such thing as normal, but normalizing how a person is thinking, feeling, being, and doing. So does that answer it?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really appreciate that perspective. Um, I'm curious. I had this thought come to me while you were speaking about this permission and basically giving people permission and validating whatever they're curious about or their needs are or whatever the case is. And I want to ask you, because so many people, especially women, I think, lack the permission to be sexual and to
Mm-hmm.
explore our sexuality and men too. But I'm curious, do we face consequences psychologically or in any way for not exploring ourselves there?
Of course. Because when we're resisting, what we're doing is we're contracting. And what makes sex work is expansion, literally and figuratively. And my system that I use is a 5-part system that I created that integrates mind, emotions, body image and behaviors, energy and spirit. And I teach it as a kind of, it's a kind of chart where my client can say, where am I stuck in my thinking? Where am I stuck in my feelings? Where am I stuck in my physical self? In my energies, in my spirit. Spirit's not spirituality or religion. I call it the little blue flame. It's kind of like the essence of yourself. And it's like the pilot light. And in a way, it's kind of like it resides in the second chakra down there. So that if the pilot light is out, you're not going to have much interest in sex. You're not going to have much erotic energy flowing within yourself or toward anybody else. And there are people who identify as asexual, which is a whole other conversation. So I think that you're really asking what happens if we block ourselves. And when we block ourselves, we go into resistance. And when we go into resistance, we're fighting hard against our essence, our nature. I believe that our life force energy is our sexual energy. And many, 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 many have written about it and teach about it. And if we block that, we're blocking off a part of ourselves. It's kind of like saying, well, I'm not ever going to feel anger. But then if you never feel anger, you're never going to feel sad and you're never going to feel happy. And you hear what I'm saying? Like you just start closing yourself off. And so as you close yourself off, I have a lot of clients who come to me in a very tragic state of shutdown. They've given up. And especially most of my clients are couples and I love couples work because I love trying to figure out like a detective, what's in the way here? And then I pull them apart and I look at this person, I look at that person, I think, what's in the way? Then I bring them back together and we figure out these strategies for how can you unlock all this stuff and giving them great information, great education, teaching them how to know who they are first so they can share that with somebody else. And of course, giving them permission. It just keeps coming back and back and back and back. Does that help?
Yes, yes. My follow-up question to you would be, how do we choose to be open or move forward being open in a society that maybe shames us for it or makes us feel afraid to really go and explore our sexuality?
I think we're living in a very interesting time right now because as a sex doc, what I'm sitting on is looking at kind of the bell curve of people who really want more. They wish they could have more, be more. express more, explore more. And then at the same time, we have this other half, which are like, oh my God, we should be poly. Oh my God, I don't know what my gender identity is. Oh my God, I can't say anything that isn't politically correct, right? Like there's a lot of tension in this world right now and in our culture and our society at large. So we have to find support. That's my opinion. We have to find peer support. That's really, really, really critical. So to be in space, whether it's virtual or real space, with others who share your values, who share your longings, who share how you talk about things, and to feel safe. I think that is very interesting. I even though I know a lot, I still learn because I'm a lifelong learner, and I love to take workshops with great teachers in my specialty area. And I took a workshop recently on the polyvagal theory, which is how our nervous system is geared toward pleasure, basically. And it was with, the luminary who founded it, Porges. And he said the bottom line for humanity is that we're all just trying to feel safe in this world. It blew my mind. It's so obvious. And so I think, how do we find safety? I sometimes feel like when I get a male client, for example, who is saying, I just have erectile problems, and, my girlfriend, she's so powerful and she's so directive and she makes more money than me. And I remember this one particular client who was just this wonderful man, very, very accomplished and self-realized. And he had this very overbearing female partner. And I said, I don't think your penis feels safe in there. And he said, oh my God. Yeah. And so we have to find safety nets. We have to find safe community where we can be reflected back. There's so much freedom in today's world. I mean, I don't know of any of my clients who aren't exploring some alternative form of relationship right now, or exploring some kinky fetish, BDSM variety, or who maybe are questioning, well, what if we, shape shifted and I put a strap on for him, or prostate play, or whatever. There's just all this amazing opportunity for free expression. And yet we're living at a time right now, as we're having this conversation, in the backdrop of a divide politically in our nation and in our values. And so what scares me and troubles me is that things that are for our wellness, things that are for our health, things that are for human life surviving, thriving, the benefit of all of us, are being suppressed, are being denied, taking away access to textbooks or books, that have been classics, that have helped girls make it through adolescence and their first period, or access to freedom of choice. The reversal of Roe v. Wade is a huge turning point in this country and this culture. And things like the threat against same-sex marriage, or the threat against comprehensive sexuality education. And where does that lead? Does it mean that, we won't be training gynecologists anymore because they're afraid of getting into gynecology, because there are death threats for gynecologists who are treating a patient after a miscarriage in a state where that gynecologist can go to jail? Okay, that's the context and the backdrop of what we're all inside. And this is part of the PTSD as well, not just the pandemic, but we're living in this really divisive time where a lot of our sexual freedom is at risk, if not being removed, brick by brick by brick. So I say, you got to find your people. And maybe that's why I'm so dedicated to training my students at Sex Coach U, because we're a global community. And once somebody graduates, they're welcome back into our incredible expert webinars that we lead, or our community gatherings that we have virtual right now. I'm leading my first live retreat that I've done since 2019, this October, for sexuality professionals. And it's a 6-day intensive, immersive, experiential deep dive into Heal the Healer. Because those of us who are doing the healing, who are the educators, the clinicians, we need the healing too, because we're part of this fabric of a time and a society that makes it really difficult and threatening to be doing sex positive work. So I went very political, didn't I?
A little bit. But I think you handled it well and stayed PC. So
I stay in my lane.
yeah, no, there was nothing inflammatory about what you said.
No.
Yeah. If you could tell every household in the world something that about sexuality that you think that the world just isn't getting, but you wish they would, what would you tell them?
Love yourself, and love yourself first. Because until the war within stops, the war without isn't going to go away. And this is it. This is the issue that we get. This body is the body I was issued at birth. This is my body till the day I stop breathing in this body. And my journey is to accept it and to take really good care of it. Self-care is the number one tenet of the entrepreneurial training that we offer at Sex Coach U, because in coaching, we know that we are the business and we run the business, but it really is deeper than that. It's broader than that. We have to take care of ourselves, and we have to really have positive self-esteem, positive self-worth, positive self-regard. Because if we don't like or love ourselves, how the hell can somebody else like or love you? So that's the first step. And the other is to really keep celebrating your sexuality. Don't stop. In other words, don't go, oh, it didn't work last night. I guess I'm done. Forget about that. That was just an experience. Don't judge yourself, and don't base things on the worst word in sexuality is a P word. Now, what do you think that word might be?
Ooh, this is fun.
Gee, I wonder what that word might be. Performance. That's the P word. That's the bad P word. And the good P words are things that we use to talk about female sexual anatomy, for example. Pleasure is a good P word. It used to be a negative P word. P for pleasure is very positive. But performance, I think that for men, and I know some of you who are watching are men, you think you're supposed to give a good performance. And we have the word performance anxiety when erections don't work or when you come too fast. What happens is you go neck up. You go, I'm worried. Am I going to keep it up? Is it going to stay hard? Am I doing what they want? And so that performance word is just destructive. Get out of it. Don't think about it. Just go for pleasure. Go for the process. Go for the things that work for you, like connection.
So beautifully said. I love that when I ask that question of what would you tell everyone that they're not quite getting now about sexuality, you didn't skip not one beat, and it was love yourself.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that that message is put out there enough in this day and age. That I think that is key to many areas of health and success. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
My final question, this has been a great interview, really fascinating and interesting. I like to end the interviews by asking, from your experience, from your perspective, what steps do we take to move forward in creating a more sex positive, sexually healthy society and culture?
De-shaming. So taking shame out of the equation, learning how to de-shame yourself. It's kind of like take a shower, de-shame yourself. And I also think more conversations that are open and authentic, like we've had. I think the exploitation of sex and sexuality has dominated. I think the negative side of sex and sexuality has dominated. I think the polarization has dominated. And I think we just need to understand that we're all in this together, people. This is, this is called shared global community. And we need to all be advocates for sexual wellness. That's the phrase I like to use because it encompasses the whole self, the whole person, the whole experience of life itself is about wellness. And I'm a big advocate for healthy living. I'm also an advocate for pleasure, and we have to really be able to tolerate. It's funny, isn't it? Tolerate pleasure. Because I have so many clients who like, I want you to keep a pleasure log. And by the end of the next session, I want you to bring that little report and we'll discuss, what gave you pleasure physically and otherwise in your life. And they're like, I don't have anything. Oh, we have work to do. And American society, even though we're so diverse and we're such a salad bowl, really, is still post-Puritan. Pleasure is still like the enemy, and hard work and individualization, the individual and capitalism, all that. It's all what we aim and strive for. But really, we need to learn how to slow down. We need to learn how to relax and how to connect and give and receive pleasure. That's how it's going to work.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Exactly. Exactly.